So I'm going to introduce Don Perkins. Don is a long-standing member of the community regarding fire investigations and fire safety. He has a very long resume in which he says that he's been involved in over 9,000 fire investigations throughout his career, both with the Navy and with the International Association of Arson Investigators. Mr. Perkins is a pre-board certified fire inspector by the association. And he has a lifetime teaching credential to the state of California, and he teaches the basic and advanced curriculum in fire and arson investigation in the community college system. He's been a guest speaker and lecturer for the California Conference of Arson Investigators, the International Association of Arson Investigators, the International Association of Marine Investigators. He also investigates fires that occur on vessels. And when he was at the Navy, he had numerous investigations in the maritime arena. Nuclear and conventional submarines he served on. So he has a long history of this, and he's a great speaker, and we're very excited and fortunate to have him speak before us tonight. And the fact that we have a fire district candidate, I thought that was pretty coincidental. So without further ado, I want to introduce you. Please give a Rotary welcome to Don Perkins.
Thank you, all the firefighters, for serving our community. I retired from San Jose Fire in 1994, and I had 26 years of total service. I retired early at age 50 because it is a tough career. Last year, for instance, we lost 97 firefighters throughout the United States. Firefighters fought 1,200,000 fires last year in the United States. There's one structure fire every hour, and there's 97 firefighters lost their lives. The average firefighter, by the way, only lasts 7 to 8 years after they retire. So at 73 years old, I'm taking my share of the system. Today we're going to talk a little bit about fire investigations, a career that began concurrently when I was with the fire service. I was in the Fire and Inspection Bureau for a while, and then I got into the arson unit for the city of San Jose, got promoted to captain, and went back on the line. And then I took over the arson unit in 1984, and I worked there for the next 4 years. Like all good firemen, we have part-time jobs, and I started fire cause analysis in 1980. So today I have 38 employees that work for me. We have 22 investigators. We look at 30 to 40 fires a week throughout the western U.S., Mexico, Hawaii, South Pacific, and I haven't been to Europe yet, but I'm looking forward to that one. It's a challenging career. It's something that just fell naturally good after retiring from the fire service. And by the way, my son's a battalion chief down in Moraga Ring of Fire, so we're keeping it in the house. I wanted to start out with a little bang. So this is some testing we like to do. We get to play with fire once in a while. We also get to blow things up once in a while too. So I thought you'd like this little montage of propane and natural gas explosions continue to cause us grief, and firefighters are often in harm's way when we come to these natural gas problems and propane problems. I'm going to speak tonight a little bit about what I do, and I call it the DNA, a little play on words here, of fire investigation. DNA means the dynamics, and when I talk about the dynamics of fire, I talk about the fuels that are involved, the ventilation that results in either a very dynamic fire or a very smoldering small fire. The time that a fire burns is really important to a fire investigator. The longer the fire burns, the harder it is for us to get us back to what and where this fire begins. And the suppression activities also play a part in our field, because I have to know where they're attacking the fire in a larger building. where they first see the fire. They can actually, we used to make fun with Sunnyvale Public Safety because they're both police and fire down in the Bay Area. And we always used to make fun of them because if we had a garage fire, we knew that when Sunnyvale showed up, they would push the fire from the garage through the kitchen, down the hall, and out the back bedroom. And you can literally do that, but anyway, it doesn't happen too much anymore. Next slide. Go ahead. Okay, the investigation. I talked a little bit about the investigations of the investigators. We have to go through a lot of training. I probably have 2,000 to 3,000 hours of continuing education. I've gone through the FBI Academy, through alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, through Emmitsburg, Maryland, and the National Fire Academy. And I continually educate myself year after year and review those nuts and bolts to make sure that I can perform good for us when that fire does occur. So this is just a little insight here of what we do, what our qualifications are, what those investigators go through to get to where they are today. Did I do it right?
No.
Okay. Okay, then once we look at the fire scene, then we talk about the analysis. We look about testing hypothesis, which goes back to the science in school. And we evaluate our results and we make recommendations. As a private fire investigator, I work for insurance companies probably 90% of the times. A lot of times I get involved with law firms in fatal cases or injury cases. In the insurance industry, they want to get their money back. So 10% of the time, my cases end up in court. And so we do product liability. You own a home, I'm your tenant, and I cause a fire, I'm insured. Your insurance is going to come after my insurance. That's kind of what happens. I learned over 40 years of looking at fires, those three major causes of fire, and it's not electrical, it's men, women, and children. Those are major causes of fire. Okay, so fire scene investigations where art meets the science. Years ago, in the early mid-70s, when I first became a fire investigator, it was a little different story. My training was what my captain told me things. And he said, this is how you do it, kid. And in San Jose, we were peace officers, we were sworn. And much like John Bargsdale does with Sacramento, he and I are good friends. And we used to use the Ouija board once in a while to get to conclusions. And that's why a lot of people said, oh, you have to tell me what caused that fire. Is this electrical, right? Of course. So this is a little history about what happened from the early 80s when I got on and what I went through with the public sector and knowing my fire investigations were centered around what my captain told me. So I put myself through school. I did get field experience, and we've come a long way as a fire investigation team. We're very scientific oriented, and we evaluate all our fires scientifically. So this is taken by one of my fire investigators. He's a part-time investigator for me, but he works for San Bruno Fire. And this is the San Bruno explosion that was taken out of the cabin of this apparatus. So that's what some of the things we have to come to sometimes. I represented the homeowners, some 20 some odd homeowners. There was 7 or 8 fatalities on the San Bruno explosion. That was a 5-foot diameter natural gas line, and the well broke. And that's some of the views that people had to endure and see. There's some certain words you would use as a firefighter when you came up to a scene like this. And that's ground zero. And that's where that's actually a crater in the ground caused by that 5-foot natural gas line that was put in the early 50s, and it put out 300 PSI of pressure. So it includes, fire investigation includes determining not only the cause, but the fire spread. So a lot of times we have to come up with an area of origin, but fire spread is very important for us. This is my engine 4, first in on Santana Road. That was a full block of construction, 3 stories tall. It was a $150 million loss. I call a fire like this Sherwood Forest because the construction codes have changed, and unfortunately they changed because they say, well, we shouldn't do things this way. And this is one good example. We had the winds blowing. We had nothing more interior than 2x4 wood stud construction, and the exterior of the building wrapped. So when Sherwood Forest burns, it had plenty of fuel, plenty of ventilation, and there was nothing more we could do, but we used the technique of surround and drown and protect our exposures. Do this right. That's an after shot of that same building. I was in Mexico on another fire. It's called the Vivar on this vessel fire. It's 92-foot Hatteras. I was called in by the owner, who was a prominent attorney in Mexico, and they told him that this fire was incendiary or arson in nature, and that he set this fire. And we were successful in showing that the fire investigation team didn't do their job properly, and that there was no reason for this person to set it. There was no motive. He had another boat exactly like this, and he was a very wealthy individual. You know, why would you set a fire at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday in a port of La Paz? We see Mexico, the Bomberos, fighting this fire, and that's about as much as they did at the end of the day. This is what we had. So I talk about time. When things burn for a long time, how can you tell me this started in this particular area in this specific method? And we were able to spend a week down there and go through that. We also have to, we see a lot of bodily injury cases and death cases. This case here that I'm showing you is in Ore City, Texas. I had 5 fatalities in a single wide mobile home. And we spent a week with Home Depot buckets, those nice orange buckets. We laid out the trailer on Home Depot parts, and we marked it all up like that and added areas and went through each area that you see there with sifting, going through it and pulling out evidence, finally coming to a conclusion of where this fire began and how it began. So there I am, I like to say there I am kicking ash, because that's what I do a lot. And in this particular case, as we dug through that area, we found what we believe was not only the cause, we found this in the area of fire origin, where this fire began, is the area of fire origin. And then within that area of fire origin, you identify potential heat sources. In this particular case, the lady who passed away was wearing a canyon, oxygen. And I represent an AirSip, the manufacturer that produces the oxygen concentrators. Why do people have oxygen concentrators? Because they have emphysema. Why do they have emphysema? And what do they do when they have oxygen in their nose? They still smoke. And consequently, in that same diagram, or that same mess, we ended up finding both mom and daughter with cigarettes in the hand right at where my fire began. So we have to determine. That's not mine. Who's that? I lost it all there. You gonna put me back? You want me to do it? Okay. Okay. Good. So we determine the degree which human contributed to the fire. We look at product failures. This was an interesting fire. It was the HVAC system that the gentleman just put up in his home. And the installer was good enough to leave all the instructions right next to the heater. So you don't do that. Some human error. The other good case I have that I chuckle once in a while was the call that came in and said, my car's on fire, it's in the garage, and there's fire coming out of the passenger side of the seat. And we found the hairdryer with an extension cord underneath the front seat because they had spilled some coffee. So they wanted to dry it out. Remember, men, women, and children. Okay? We've had some fires in these wind farms, and these things are monstrous. And of course, we aren't going to put any fire out there, so we have to wait till it burns down. Hopefully, your truck isn't in the way. So, definition is determining the origin, cause, development, and responsibility. That's my job when I look at a fire scene. And we apply the scientific method. This is no different today than in the kids in the science in the classes that they do. They define the problem, they collect the information or the data, witness information, physical evidence, You analyze what you have, and then you form conclusions or opinions. And then you test your opinions, and hopefully it'll come to a final ending. So again, the DNA, the dynamics, the fuel, the air, the time, and suppression activities. The fuel can vary from gasoline to materials, but when things start to burn, like in this setup that we do, every year we burn, we have a conference down in San Luis Obispo, and next year we've got a conference up here in McClellan Air Force Base, and we're going to set up booths. We set these booths up and we let the investigators, we set the fires on purpose, and then they get to watch the fire burn and spread so they understand the dynamics of a fire. So we can actually see my fuel, which is that one chair on the right. We can see other fuels. What people don't realize is that smoke has a lot of materials that are combustible, and eventually those materials raise to a point where they self-ignite, spread the fire, and they add the fire to the other fuel to the left. And that's exactly what you see there. You don't have 2 points of origin. Your fire did start on the right, but the fire went overhead, and the radiant heat flux from the smoke and ignited the basket and the materials below, extending the fire. So we also look at the effects and the location of a fire. So if we had a fire in this particular room, and we ran some experiments. So I took a mattress, a cushion out of the sofa, and I set it on fire in the middle of a room. And this is the flame that we get after a minute or so. And that's about it. We get a flame height of about 3 feet. Now I'm talking about ventilation. If this is the sofa that we're looking at, we're drawing air in from 360 degrees. Well, what changes if that fire is someplace else, like against the wall? Pretty soon we see that fire going up a lot higher. Same fire, same fuel, same ignition scenario, same ventilation, except now I'm drawing oxygen from only, or air from only 180 degrees as opposed to 360. So now my flame heightens. Now we put it in the corner, and now I'm reducing to 45 degrees. This is the same fire, same fuel, and now look at the effects that you get. So you have to, when I go into a building fire, I have to know what the contents are, and I have to know where they're located, I have to know my windows, and I have to know how long it burns in order to fight and see what the results will be. Fire suppression activities, this is a fire up in Washington State, and we had a fatality in this case. Firefighters came in, suppressed the fire, but they also pushed that fire to the opposite side of the building through an attic, because the codes were not enforced when this building was built. The code says that you need attic separation to repeat 3,000 square feet, and this particular condo is just a completely U-shaped, so they pushed the fire from that one unit all the way around to the other side. So building effects, and there's the roof of that building. The Cannery is now a hotel down in San Francisco on the wharf. What level did this start? Can we tell? Where's all my charring coming from? The third floor, right. So that's what I had when I got there. So we had a third floor fire. It was on a Saturday. Well, this is what I got up on the ladder. I saw it from a different perspective. And they had some earthquake reinforcement, but the guy put it in upside down. So on Saturday, he came with his torch and cut things up and reversed it and welded it back together, unbeknownst without a fire watch. And at the end of the day, this is what they had. Out of the building. Other things, men, women, and children. This was a little off base, but they just moved into this home, and they moved their portable dishwasher right over the vent. It was in December, and so they had a floor heater, and so the heater came on and just took out the plastic, and away it went. That's an instant remodel. Okay, so we determined where the fire begins, then we looked for the point of origin, and once I'm at the point of origin, then I gathered everything that I could infer to be a heat source, and try to bring the heat source to the fuel source and give you an event. So in fire scene reconstruction, we actually, in San Jose, we had a little problem at first when I was in there. I would get to the fire scene at 2 or 3 in the morning, and the entire contents from the bedroom where the fire began went out through the window. And then they overhauled it, and they were sure that this fire wasn't going to spread or come back. But that didn't help me out, so I had them bring everything back in. And so now the fire service is pretty diligent in saying, this is my room of fire origin, we put it out, we're kind of gentle with it, wait till the fire investigator gets there so they can do their job, and then put things back together. There we go. So we not only have to show now what caused the fire, we have to show what didn't cause the fire. So I have mechanical and electrical engineers that work for me. So I'll collect the Dell computer, the HP printer, the power strip, and the other associated parts that may have started in this particular office. And then I might focus on one thing, but I have to eliminate the others. So forensically through x-raying and through metallurgy and through diligently taking things apart to see where this failure mode occurred in whatever product we have to look at everything. I spend a lot of time in court. I probably in court 3 trials a year average and probably a dozen depositions as an expert witness. And a lot of times we win, a lot of times we lose, but sometimes I have to turn around and see what's going on. So, and see who's coming after me. So it's not what I do, it's what I don't do, and that's where I don't want to be. And that's what I tell my investigators. It's not what you do, it's what you don't do that gets you in trouble. So be diligent in what you do and how you work. I know it's a little bit early. We went through this really quick. After doing this for 40 years, I've got 40. I don't have 9,000 fires, only did about 5,000. I don't know where you saw 9 there. Must have got the.
I'll show you later.
Oh, okay. Must have been up there. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
So, my niece caught her car on fire because she was charging her cell phone.
Okay.
Because the car stayed hot, the charger in the car stayed hot.
Right.
And so she left her phone in there and the battery caught on fire.
Was it a Samsung?
It was, I think, yes.
So yeah, it's fun to see these different products. And, you know, I was just over in Hawaii on a fire at the golf course out there, and they have these new skateboards that are designed for golf carts called skate cart. They're made out of Australia, and so they're an enlarged skateboard, but they have lithium-ion batteries in them. And if you don't charge them right, they'll take off, and it took off, and it cost their maintenance shop about 30 or 40 of these boards, plus another 20 or 30. And it was a couple $1 million loss. So lithium-ion batteries present quite a problem for us today. Yes, sir.
Back when I was involved in the fire service, we had one house fire that was particularly hot, and we thought that the accelerant was probably white gas, and it was. Do you run into that anymore?
Well, we actually have canines that are trained to pick up to 16, 17 different types of accelerants or ignitable liquids. So the fire service and ATF have their own dogs that we bring in. But just because there's gasoline, and where did that gasoline come from? In other words, years ago, the firefighters used to have a gasoline-powered equipment. They would bring their equipment into the house, and they would be out in the street, and they're walking through water that may have had contaminants in it. Right. Garage fires give, where isn't there an ignitable liquid in most people's garages? So the accelerant in and of itself is just one factor that we take into consideration. We have to look at other patterns that surround that to bring us back to that, including what people may have seen early. Maybe fire damages are different. If a fire starts here, for instance, this fire is going to spread in my direction and your direction, so I'm going to see more damage here than I am going to see over here from the side. I'm going to see more damage above me than over in other areas if I get to it early enough.
Well, this had been spread around.
Yeah, there is when it spreads on the ground, it can produce a pattern that's distinct in and of itself.
Right.
But today there's a term of art they call flashover.
Right.
At 1200 degrees centigrade, or 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, 600 centigrade, when the temperatures in the room exceed that temperature, everything in that room combusts all at once. And so you produce patterns that on the carpet underneath your tables that years ago we used to think was an ignitable liquid. In fact, it's just a compartment with a total involvement or flashover. So it can be tricky.
So what was your most challenging, baffling, or toughest investigation?
Oh, A lot of them are tough. I guess I like to use the word frustration, because a lot of times the attorneys on the public sector, the DAs aren't trained in the investigation process. And San Jose and Senate Metro were all peace officers. We carried weapons, we made arrests, we transported, and did the whole thing, but our duties were limited to that. And other smaller departments, they don't have that infrastructure. So the firefighter says it's arson, then they call a PD. PD comes in. I did one, I have a contract to do Roseville fires for them. So I had one first fire I did for them last year was an arson fire with a homeowner, and the policeman came on site, and I said, this is what you have to do. I brought a captain with me in so that he could testify, because I'm a private and he was public, and so my boundaries were limited. Anyway, they just don't understand the right questions when you aren't trained properly in that. So I can't say it was tough. It was just frustrating to know you had a good case and the DA would rather do a robbery or what other crime there is. Yes.
So what's a common thing that ignorant people, like a house fire, that you think we should know that maybe a lot of people don't know?
Well, I think I built my home 10 years ago, so the first thing I did is sprinkler it. So my home has fire sprinklers not only inside the house, but the garage and the attic, because I see a lot of fires in attics, I see a lot of fire in garages. And I put smoke detectors in my attic, and people have them inside the house but not in the attic. So if your fire starts in the attic, you've got a half-inch or 5/8 cap on your roof, you've got 20 to 30, 40 minutes before that smoke starts coming in. So unless somebody warns you. So use those smoke detectors. Probably, I think, almost 80% of all our fires are structure fires. And so that amounts to, what the heck was that number of fires? I forget that they had structure fires every day. It's 1 a minute, basically. Structure fires, 1 a minute throughout the U.S. I didn't answer your question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sprinklers and smoke detectors.
Exactly. Yeah.
How many houses do you see that have taken the batteries out of the smoke detector?
Lots, and especially in apartments, because again, and I also see with the price of homes going up the way they have. I did a fire in Sunnyvale the other day, and I had a Hispanic family, had 8 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. The rent was $2,500 a month. And why? Because they want the laborers to work there, but there's no place for them to live. So they're stuffing all these people, and that goes here too in Sacramento. They just put a lot of people in these 2-bedroom units, and when you get more people, you have more probability of things to go wrong. Especially now it's winter, so the heating fires are really starting to come in. Wildland is pretty well gone. But yes, sir.
My question had to do with the gas line that blew up. It makes an impression on me because I'm aware of a big gas line that goes down the south side of Madison. PG&E serves gas here. Does the public, I know you can go to the water company and see where all the water lines are, but is the location of the big gas mains available publicly?
I don't know.
Not buy a house next to it?
I don't know, PJ doesn't talk to us much. Yeah, but the attorneys get that stuff, but they keep it away from us, so.
Do ruptures of gas lines happen very often?
Well, often enough where it makes us, I did the one in Rancho where they had that family, killed 2 people, I believe it was, on that one court in Rancho Cordova, about 3 or 4 years ago. And that was just a PG&E had been out there and used an improper fitting. And then the natural gas under pressure goes to the path of least resistance. So it has to be 18 inches under the ground. It has to be surrounded with sand. So once the gas is in there, it's going to follow that sand as opposed to the packed wood. And it went right back into the house and then found an ignition source. All right, thank you very much for your time.